I'm your oh so glorious and beloved Mace Valor, and I wrote these books. Let's talk about them. Now, recently I had a massive influx of subscribers. My channel has essentially been dead for years, and now that I'm coming back to life, let's talk about the road ahead of us. So for those of you that found me because of the audiobook I made for this video is basically just going to be talking about questions, comments, concerns, grievances, criticisms about this. And I'm going to throw a little bit of this in there just for frame of reference because these are intrinsically linked to one another. And first and foremost, before I even get started on all of that, yes, I am currently working on more content for you guys. My goal now is to do what I love, and that is to write. And I love being able to share it with you guys because I'm going to be perfectly honest, that audiobook for the reset was the first real criticism I've ever got on any of my writing. See, I've had friends and family that have told me for years that they would read my work once it was published. Well, I went the self-publishing route, and even still, no one really ever read it. And the few that did just said, oh, it's good. I need feedback. Any author to hone their craft needs feedback, good, bad, and ugly. And I saw a lot of all three, and I'm glad that I got it, because how can I grow as an author unless I absorb the criticism about my work? I don't think of it as a bad thing. I think of it as a very good thing because it's going to push me down to further success down the road. So thank you for everyone that watched the video and left feedback of any kind, good, bad, or indifferent. Even the ones that made utterly no sense. Thank you. You wrote words and appeased the algorithm gods. And one last thing before we get started, long shot, but I might as well throw it out there. The only thing that's really stopping me moving forward is decent audio quality. Let's face it, the audiobook for the reset wasn't the best in the world from a production standpoint. It's very passable for being free on YouTube. Very passable, extremely. But is it indicative of the type of work that I want to be able to deliver to people? No, it's not. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of bad. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a plane flying right above. I live under a flight path. I do all of my work in my garage. There's a lot of hurdles to overcome, so thankfully there's some free tools out there like Audacity to help, compensate for any of the environmental stresses that are put onto the recording software. But I do want to move forward and deliver more stuff to you guys. And part of that really includes a decent microphone. So the next goal of mine, personal goal, is to have enough money specifically for a decent mic. And if there's some extra, maybe some additional, added soundproofing. Just enough in one direction to properly capture my voice and the cringe-inducing accents that come out of it for the various characters in my stories. So if you feel so inclined, I'll leave a PayPal down below if anyone wants to donate to that so I can get a better microphone. The sooner I get a better microphone, the sooner that you guys get more of these. I appreciate the consideration. It's not mandatory. Obviously, just enjoy the content. And then once we're done talking about these, I'm going to give you a very short roadmap of the actual projects I'm working on and will be delivering in the coming months. So to kick things off, let's talk about the reset. The reset was designed in a very specific way. It takes place in the Shelter universe, and it follows several different characters with every one of them having their own independent story. And a lot of those stories intertwine. And there are some references to Shelter. Now here's the point where we're getting to some heavy spoiler territory, so if you don't want to listen, just skip ahead. One of the characters that we met in the reset, specifically Steven, the trucker in the short story, The Road Trip, the one that helped Brandon Maverick and his son escape essentially the small town that was holding them captive, exploiting his labor and keeping his son as hostage so that he would continue to work. Gotta love the shelter initiative and all the glorious things it provides to people in need. That character actually started off in Shelter, which takes place a year after the actual reset event itself in Chicago. And you see Steven and his dog in this book. Well, the whole premise of that story, yes, we will eventually see Brandon Maverick in the future, but the whole premise was to connect some dots on how Steven got the dog and how the dog got its name. And there's a lot of things in here that are like that. There are stories that offer one very narrow slice of the world. Take the ranch, for example. The whole premise of the ranch was to basically talk about rural towns. One of the things that I feel like I could have done better was to not put that story right where I did. And that's mainly because I talked about rural settlements. I talked about, how those communities were the ones that thrived the most. We don't actually see that until the book that comes after Shelter, which I am currently working on, Refuge, the town of Haven, Colorado. It fits the bill to a T, but let's not get into that just yet. So a story like The Ranch, it ultimately provided the readers what I wanted it to, but I do feel that I could have probably placed it somewhere differently in the book to kind of make a little bit more sense, or I could have actually omitted it. Those characters will return in the future, but not in any meaningful way. If you've read The Reset, when you see those characters in the future, you'll understand where they came from, but they have nothing to do with the Shelter series moving forward. It was just a slice of life to kind of understand the larger state of the world. The USS Alvin York is probably one of my favorite stories that I wrote in here. I probably had a lot of fun with it. I got to do a lot of research on the actual Alvin York, the Medal of Honor recipient. And, oh, wow. It was one of those stories that I felt so connected to, being a veteran myself. Army, not Navy, so there are some differences there. Now, the importance of Commander Fort, Tyler Fort, his wife, is one of the main characters in Shelter. Now, the way that Shelter is structured is you have two present-day perspectives, Scott and Andrew. But then there's another perspective that we only see through diary entries, and that is from Danielle. We don't know what her last name was, because at the time I didn't really know. But this is why we retcon stuff as authors. We go back and we add things to give it some clarity. So Danielle Fort. Commander Fort, his wife, Danielle. And yeah, they're intrinsically linked. Tyler Fort will show up again in the Shelter greater, larger universe. I do have plans for him. We are eventually going to see him arrive in Antarctica and go to McMurdo and McMurdo Station and see all the joy that happens there. But he's not really going to be showing up in the main Shelter universe. Quite possibly not until the very, 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 very end. Like right before the epilogue. I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm going to introduce him or not. I do have an idea. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I haven't even started writing Haven yet. Just outlines. Not even a rough draft. Because I'm finishing up Refuge. Now, I already talked about this before, but one of the biggest pieces of criticism that I received from my audiobook for The Reset had very little to do with the contents of the book itself. It was the audio quality of the actual audiobook. And I've kind of explained in the comments, I've explained at the beginning of this, I am working the best that I can with the tools available to me. And the reason why is because I know that if I procrastinate and I put it off, it's like, hey, put it off, put it off, put it off. Put it off until I can finally have decent equipment. I'll probably never actually make the audiobook myself. And paying someone to do it is ungodly expensive. And if I have the tools and the know-how, I might as well work with what I got, because this is my dream. This is what I've wanted ever since I was a kid, and I'm actually enacting it now. As you know, I'm still young, but I'm feeling old. But this makes me feel young again. This gives me joy. Like, not just writing, but people listening to what I write and enjoying it and providing feedback. I love it. It really does invigorate me and provide me with motivation that I haven't had in years. Another quick note is that there were some comments about the audiobook that weren't a big fan of the preface. And that's okay, because I'm not the biggest fan of it either. You see, there's an old adage in writing: show, don't tell. And not just in the Reset, but also in Shelter, there's prologues that kind of tell a bit much. And they're kind of skewed into a particular mindset that frames the overall story in such a polarizing political light that, looking back, I wish I would have either completely changed how they were done or omitted them completely. But I don't know, part of me as a new author still feels like there are certain things I need to announce. These are bad habits that eventually I will grow out of. In some of the other projects I'm working on, I don't have anything like that whatsoever. It just, the story starts. You know, it hooks you in, and you're not trying to do homework and research and understand the world before actually getting into the story. And I have a lot of fun with those, because I'm demonstrating, showing, not telling. You're going along for the journey, and you're absorbing information at a very natural pace instead of having exposition dumps thrown on you. So that issue with the preface, prologue, explaining too much and framing things in a way that's probably too politically charged. Yeah, we're not going to have to worry about that in the future, thankfully, because since I have completed these and put these out into the universe, I am not doing that as much anymore. Oh, boy. You know, fun fact, when I started writing Shelter, the idea came to me, homeless, living in my car, in 2016. Had a baby on the way. Presidential election was going on, and all I can remember is how divisive the world was. It was bad. I had close friends and family at odds with one another because of this strict political divide, and it was insanity. And I just kept thinking, like, just let the bombs drop. Let's just be over and done with it already. Like, this is just insane. What, like, everything is so divisive. Like, we can't come together on anything. It was very doom and gloom. Like, I was in such a weird mindset back then, you know, looking at my own reality and pushing it into my perception of the world around me. It was grisly. I'm not going to lie. But it inspired me. It's like, well, what would happen? What would happen if all money was worthless? This thing that everyone's fighting for, this thing that everyone has as like a totem of power for people to have. What if it was gone? What if it was worthless? You know, crypto was on the rise, and I put the pieces together, man. Global economic collapse, because a lot of the world was converting over to cryptocurrency instead of traditional fiat currency. Yeah, it's all bullshit. I mean, yeah, the events that have happened in Shelter, could this happen in real life? To a degree, yeah, sure, there could be a global economic collapse. But the way described in here, it's far-fetched. Do you know why? Because it's fiction. It's a story. That's the setup. That's the environment that the characters are in. But you're hanging around because you want to see what the characters are going to do in that environment. So, yeah, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. One of the greatest things from the comments that I get on that audiobook was people just enjoying it. People putting it on in the background for like a long drive, or people that constantly absorb audiobooks and they're listening to a new one every opportunity that they get. They're really expanding their horizons. And for me, it's like, it's awesome to hear the feedback from those people that are like, hey, this made my road trip like super quick. Like, I was lost in your story and it was just great. Thank you. Like, that makes me feel awesome. It's like all those hours, like an entire month. It took me an entire month to make this. And that was the only project I was working on. If I wasn't helping out with the kids, I was recording the audio, editing the audio, and the cool thing about that is I was able to go in and fix some grammatical things as I was speaking it out loud. So there's a lot of benefits to this. So part of what I'm going to be doing moving forward with a lot of these other stories that I'm going to talk about in just a moment is when I publish those stories out to the world will be the exact same time that you guys get them on YouTube. YouTube has always been like a big thing for me, and I really want to find my space in it. And I think I finally have. Because even though it's like a fun little passion thing and it's how I kind of connect with the world, writing is like my passion ever since I was like 10, 11 years old. I've been writing my entire life. And I just have this thing where I just couldn't finish something. And Shelter was a story that I finished. And I'm still continuing on. But I've also gotten to the point where these other ideas I have in my head, they're not just in my head anymore. I'm actually jotting down the ideas in my notes. I'm actually forming outlines. I'm actually starting rough drafts. I'm moving into editing and making sure it's cleaned up to not just be published, but also to be recorded and delivered to you guys. So these are all really exciting things, and I'm really glad that I'm able to do this. It's spectacular. The thing is, I'm a very impatient person. Part of the reason why the audiobook for this came out, and it's been like 80 days since it was released, give or take, the reason why there hasn't been more stuff is because I've been working on it. As much as I want to just finish up these other projects and then bring them out to you guys, is because this is the bar I have to pass. I wrote this in 6 months. From conception in my head to released out to people, 6 months. It was the largest turnaround that I've ever done on writing anything. And the reason why this took 6 months is because this took 3 years. It took a very long time for me to do this. Working crazy hours, constantly working, trying to just make ends meet for my family. When leading up to the release of this, it was a lot and it took a long time, but throughout that entire time I was able to develop the world, and I developed the world of Shelter in such a way that moving forward the world's already established. I kind of know the players of the game. I know where they're going. I understand their motivations. So because of that, anything that's connected to this is a lot easier to write because a lot of the work is already done. The basis, the foundation of their reality is complete. And by having another published novel in the series, wow, it just makes it easier in the future. So, to anyone that is as impatient as me, that just wants another project developed from my brain out for your guys' entertainment, soon enough. Like I said, plug in this again. A decent microphone would help, but it's not needed right this moment, at least within a month or two. It kind of depends on where I'm at as far as how I feel about these projects I want to bring forward. And if it seems like I'm kind of all over the place, it kind of like I am. I don't have any notes or anything in front of me. I just wanted to take this moment to kind of spitball out of my brain like where I'm at with this whole thing and to show off my gratitude to you guys, because it really does mean a lot to me. But if there's any questions, comments, or concerns, or even further criticism, if you leave them in the comments of this video, I'll make a follow-up addressing those very specifically. But for now, think of this as a one-shot, just me and you talking. Moving on. So there are some projects that I am actually working on and things that I am trying to finish up and deliver to you guys. But it's going to be done in a very different way. So I need to make this into an audiobook and deliver it to you guys. Yeah, once I get a new microphone, that's going to be the next big project. But before then, what are the other projects that I'm working on? See, I love dystopian, I love post-apocalyptic. Those are my jam. But a couple of the things I've come up with aren't necessarily in that genre, but the story ideas are interesting enough that for someone like me, that's the media that I watch, is disaster, end of the world, post-apocalyptic, dystopian futures, science fiction, all that stuff. These other stories that I've been working on are worthwhile, but there's also some more post-apocalyptic and dystopian stuff. So here's a breakdown of some of the stories that I'm going to be delivering in the coming months. So first and foremost, Demon in a Bottle. The premise of Demon in a Bottle: Frank dies of an overdose, and when he dies, he meets a demon named Barfazal. Barfazal makes him an offer. 10,000 souls. You provide 10,000 souls, you don't have to go to hell. At least not yet. I will send you back to the land of the living. You sign this contract. Boom. All you have to do then is present to me 10,000 souls, and we're good. You've paid your debt for me throwing you back to your miserable life. Interesting so far. Okay. Guy sells his soul to the devil, essentially. So what's so crazy about this story? The concept is, what if Constantine and Dexter had a love child that was addicted to crack? Just saying that out loud, it sounds so fucking stupid. So for Demon in a Bottle, Frank signs the contract, and he is forever followed by this little demon imp named Sam. Not his real name, but that's what we call Sam because his actual spoken name just sounds like a blender of souls and filth. It's inaudible completely. And yeah, that's the environment that I record in. Welcome. Now, Frank can't understand this demon. It's constantly trying to talk to him. No one else can see it. He feels like he's going crazy. But when he indulges in his vices, when he takes the opportunity of sin, he can understand it more and more. As he gets drunk, as he gets high, as he takes one illicit substance over another, as he performs illicit acts of sinful acts, he can understand the demon. The demon becomes, instead of ugly and grotesque, becomes beautiful, charming, charismatic, and he can understand it and speak and communicate with it very clearly. So Frank has an opportunity, a second chance at life, but how is he actually going to do this if he has to kill essentially 10,000 people? Well, he can see other people's demons. And this is where manifestation comes in. If someone is so into whatever their vice is, whatever their mortal sin is, they manifest a demon from hell that will essentially claim their soul upon when they die. And when Frank takes these illicit substances and can understand his demon and see other people's manifested demons, that's when the light bulb goes off. And it's like, these are the people that deserve to die. They're going to hell anyway. They're pieces of human trash. We don't need them around here anymore. Frank's kind of a piece of human trash too. I mean, he is a notorious drug addict, but people make mistakes. What am I doing? Anyway, moving on. So that's Demon in a Bottle, basically. Demon in a Bottle, that's the premise for it. And that's one of the stories that will be coming out. And a lot of these stories are going to be episodic. Essentially, you'll get a chapter a week. Anywhere from, it'll be a 20 to 30 minute read, just depending on how much I've written. It's going to be episodic. And that's one of the things I'm having a lot of fun with, because I can kind of write these as self-contained things. So if you want to skip one, that's fine. But you're going to understand the greater story if you listen to all of them. I'm talking too much about this again. Let's move on to the next one. So like I said, that one's a little different from what I normally watch or write, but it's very compelling to me, and I've had a lot of fun writing it. But next is something more in line with dystopian, post-apocalyptic, the good stuff, right? And that is God Machine. The premise? Well, a man commits the greatest crime against all of humanity, and he pays the ultimate price. Bum bum bum. he has all of his senses derived from him completely. His tongue is cut out, his eyes are cut out, his eardrums are punctured, his limbs are ripped off, and he's forced to stay alive. He has like these machines and robots and this, that, and the other, keeping him alive indefinitely. So he consciously knows that he is still amongst the land of the living, but is helpless to enjoy even just being present in our reality. And he's completely forgotten by history. Specifically, the government that sentenced him to die in this particular, quote-unquote, die, publicly, oh, this guy's dead. But no, they just put him to sleep and then operated on him and then took his body parts and all this stuff and then forcibly kept him alive and would do medical experiments on him to gain, research and to make the world, better for them. But let's talk about the world. What crime did this man commit? He started World War III. He started a global nuclear holocaust. He had his own reasons, his own bitter reasons for just wanting all of humanity to die. But he's the one that kicked it off and then started feuds amongst the world, and with various types of neutron bombs, traditional atom bombs, hydrogen bombs, dirty bombs, just the world was wrecked. And the remnants of humanity, those few that remain, are in New Zealand, where he escapes to, and he's caught and tried and then sentenced and forgotten. And I've had a lot of fun with God Machine because it takes place hundreds of years in the future after all of that stuff happened. And we follow a girl named Charlotte. At least that's the working name. I always have her name in parentheses because I don't know if that's the one I'm going to keep. I like how they call her Char for short, but I digress. She's an auditor, and an auditor is a very big job for the government of the remnants of humanity in New Zealand, because they're essentially in charge of making sure that humanity can be prosperous and function. They're trying to repair the world, but they're kind of stuck to New Zealand because even 400 years in the future, a lot of parts of the earth are still uninhabitable because of the crazy destruction that was wrought during World War III. So, what is the big kicker? She's an auditor. She has all this crazy access. The government's totally on her side and, wants her to do good for the world. Well, a big part of that is because she's one of the few people that can actually give birth. You see, one of the effects is a lot of the remnants of humanity are sterile, men and women. So for any men or women that can actually produce viable offspring, they are the most valuable thing in the world. And I've had a lot of fun writing that element of it because there are twists and turns anyway. But God Machine, it's one of those things that's still evolutionary because of my writing style. I have the overall environment, the setting, and I have the character, their motivation, and the overall end game. But the road there, how do we get there? Well, we get there, but I let the characters decide. I craft them, and as I write, I kind of let them based upon how the flow is going and what situations are arising, and then they follow suit with however that person would best react to that situation. I'm doing that talking too much thing again. So yeah, Shar eventually meets up with this guy that destroyed the world, but he's been lost to time. Every historical record about him as ever even being on this planet has been completely erased. So when she finally meets up with him in this hidden secret bunker that, as an auditor and going through hundreds of years of power consumption from the main city, pieces together like, hey, there's this area that was using a lot of power. And then it stopped. I wonder what the deal is with that. That's probably going to answer these other questions to this other thing I'm investigating. Let's go check that out. And she eventually meets up with this guy. So she doesn't know who he is. She has no idea what he's done or why he's here like he is. And he can't communicate except through a computer. This computer that he has a neural link with, that this entire time that he's had this slumber, he's only been able to experience anything through the connection with this computer in this bunker. And she initially communicates with that, and it's still a computer, it can only tell her so much. But eventually he awakens and she communicates with him, and then she wants to get him out because she feels bad and it's wrong. And the government did this? That's not cool. Let's get you out of here. And then, well, now that he's out and he's free, he wants to finish what he started. So that's God Machine, and oh boy, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but I've been having a tremendous amount of fun with that because I'm a huge fan of the Fallout series. So anything that's kind of nuclear is really, really awesome to me. So, and I've never written any nuclear type thing before, so that's a big deal of why I'm having fun with this. Also, I get to research a lot of cool stuff from our nuclear testing and all that, so I think that stuff's a lot of fun. Next up is Second Son. Second Son is another one of those things that it doesn't necessarily fit in line with the genre that I like. Technically it does, because it's the setup for a much larger story. Second Son is relatively short for what it is. But basically the premise is that there's a couple and they want to have a child. And at this point in time, we've developed technology for designer babies. You can choose the genetics from each parent. And I don't just mean like, oh, okay. No, I mean like very specifically, like the technology is like insane at this point. So they develop every genome that they choose, boom, 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 and they design the perfect baby. Bam. During the growth process, before they can put in the embryos, it splits. So there's twins. And, well, they only want one, so they take one of them, and then the other one is to be discarded. Well, the woman that does this work for this company that does all this, she's working on a side project, an artificial womb. The first artificial womb from embryo all the way up to birth to perfectly take care of a living organism. And they've been able to test it on animals, but they've never tested it on humans. Well, I have this embryo, I might as well. So she takes the embryo, says it was discarded, it never was. She hooks it up to this artificial womb and starts growing this embryo. The woman that had the other one implanted in her, she had a miscarriage. And even though she had requested it to be thrown out, it's like, hey, let me just go in. Hopefully they have the old one. They probably won't by now. It's been a couple months. So instead, let's just start over again. We really want to have a baby, right? Come to find out, oh, wait a minute, that you have the other embryo? Oh, it's doing its thing in this artificial womb? That's crazy. I never okayed that. That's my genetic material. I have the right to my own body. What are you doing? No. And then there's like lawsuit and this, that, and the other, and there's all this insanity, and eventually, the child's born. The thing about this artificial womb is that we as human beings, we're not just us, we're also the microbes within us. So this scientist woman that's doing the artificial womb thing puts her microbes in with the artificial womb, so essentially that's her physical connectivity to this child. So that's Second Son. That's the premise of Second Son. In spoiler territory, I guess. But eventually down the road, the reason why it's important is because that child grows up to be an important person much further into the future. And this has stuff to do with CRISPR. If you understand what CRISPR is, it's like a gene healing technology that basically can help people live longer, and it also, keeps your body in check. There's still a lot of research going on about it, but in the fiction world, man, it's already a thing, right? But there's another story that I want to talk about, and that is Crimson on Frost. There's been a primordial virus that has been unearthed, and it's wreaking havoc. Lots of people are dying. And this is in conjunction around the same time that the Earth is cooling down. We are entering an ice age pretty quickly. So I'm not saying it's like, oh my God, in 2 weeks the whole world freezes over. This happens over the course of at least a generation. So as the world is cooling, some places with their predictions, like, oh my God, this is going to get really bad. We need to, have a safeguard. One of the safeguards was Iceland, where not the entirety of the island, but large sections of the island were put under these geodesic domes. And so you have entire cities under these domes to be completely climate controlled and self-sustaining. They have geothermal energy. And so they're able to kind of keep themselves afloat when the ice age hits because they have these domes. And the people that live in there, there's no sickness. For the next 1,000 years in Iceland, the people there, they don't get ill because when everything was closed up and they didn't let anyone else in, yeah, it's pretty awesome. No one's sick. Yay. So what about the guy that was born from the artificial womb thing? He's been alive this whole time, and he's completely immune to this virus. So you have the combat of the cold, frigid cold, ice age cold, like severe ice age cold, on top of the fact that you have this virus lurking about. Whew. That's as much as I want to talk about that without getting into the nitty gritty. It's a lot more, I would say, in line with dystopian. The setting is very post-apocalyptic, but oh boy, the main punch is dealing with the governments that we experience, because we don't just stay in Iceland. We got to go to France. We got to go to Germany. We got to check out Japan, baby. It makes sense as you read it, but that's one that's a little bit further down the pipeline because I am finishing up outlines on it. Very few rough drafts have been done for sections of it. Moving on to something a little more strange, fun, and also very different. These next couple of stories I've been working on are bizarre enough to me because they deal more with, I would say, personal apocalypses, which was a big selling point for the reset. And even Shelter, a lot of these characters, their world ended far before the actual apocalypse that affected the entire world. Like Scott, his life kind of sucked, and the apocalypse happening, that made shit a lot cooler. The group Death Wish, dude, like they have been through all different kinds of hell. And then the apocalypse happened, and it's just a fucking free pass for them to do whatever they want. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these people thrive in the apocalypse because they've already faced a personal apocalypse. Their world already ended. So everyone else in the world gets to experience what I feel. So this one's untitled. I've been writing outlines on it, but I haven't started a rough draft because I don't know which perspective. I don't know if I'm going to do it from a narrator, third-person perspective, or if I'm going to do it from first-person perspective. I don't know yet, but this is the idea. That a man enters this, it's like a clinical study, essentially, on this hibernation technology. And the goal is that he's going to essentially hibernate over the course of a couple years, but from his vantage point, it's going to move really, really quickly because they're going to put him under, and then a week later he wakes up. Then they put him back under, like freeze him and stuff, and then he wakes up like a month later. Like they're going to test, and it's him and a bunch of other people, right? And he decides to do this clinical study because he just wants to have time go by, and he wants to forget. And this is all because of a pretty traumatic breakup that he went through. And it kind of messed him up enough to not want anything to do with reality, and he just wants to put things on pause. The thing is, though, is because from his perspective, even though physical time is going on while he's hibernating, when he wakes up, it's only been a couple months or a couple weeks, and he's like still having to deal with all these traumatic events because he never actually took time to grieve. And events transpire, mistakes and accidents happen, and essentially the company that's doing this is going to go bankrupt because some of their machines failed and some people died. This guy, the nameless main character, decides not to sue these people. He likes being able to go under and see time just pass around him. So an agreement is made. It's like, we have one functional machine left. We have to take care of all these financial things for these other people. We have to pay you out as well for our mistakes, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, just give me a stake in the company. Like, give me stocks, whatever, right? I like what this is. I want to see it succeed. And because of him deciding to do that, because he wants to go under again, they're able to continue developing the technology. So over time, as he wakes up, he gets upgraded to new cryogenic sleep systems and whatever. And eventually, he goes wildly far in human history. So by sticking with this cryogenic sleep study and developing the technology and having it be used for various applications, he essentially rides out all of human history. And I mean all of human history, because over time he sleeps for longer and longer and longer. So the break in between his waking moments are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years in between. And, eventually he's not even on Earth anymore. Eventually he wakes up and he finds himself elsewhere because while he slept, they've moved him. I've had a lot of fun coming up with this. And eventually, the reason why in some element it's like end of the world is because the overall outcome is he arrives at the heat death of the universe. He is the last anything in existence. At least that's the roadmap for now. And a lot of these stories, like, they work very well episodically, which is why that's how I want to do it. So a lot of these, when they're finished being written, edited, and put out there, they're going to be uploaded on Kindle Vella for people to read. But if you want to listen to it, the same day that it published it on Kindle Vella is the same day that you guys get it on YouTube. So looking at my current workload, because I'm working on, and there's more stories than that, but I kind of want to wrap this up. Looking at my current workload and projecting out how I want to do release schedules and stuff for various stories, as well as actually deliver an audiobook of Shelter to you guys, because you guys love the reset. You want more of this world, this universe. You're going to get it. I'm hoping to, and this is the thing, between June and July, that's the goal, to be able to start, at least be able to bring out a video per week. That's where I want to be. That will make me comfortable, because I'll have enough written to where all I will have to do is the audio recording and assembling a video. If I can get things on my end done well enough, it'll be more than just the cover of the book with subtitles. Maybe I'll be able to do a little bit more creative stuff to have an added visual element. That's long-term stretch goals, but for now, it's all about delivering the stories to you guys. So that's the main focus, is to write, and then once I have the funds for much better microphone, because this one's showing its age. It took a while to get the buzzing to stop on this. But I made it work for now. So, because I have this hooked up to my phone, it's a whole thing. But we're making it work. We make it work with what we've got. But we do want to do better. But yeah, so that's the plan, is one video a week. Give you guys one story a week. And eventually assemble playlists with all the individual little stories. So that you can follow a cohesive thing. And then when the story's done, like, hey, that's it. Demon the Bottle. That's a wrap. We're done. Release the full audiobook of it. And the cool thing is I get to engage with you guys as we go along the way. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. I do need to wrap things up. I got dad stuff to do inside the house. So thank you guys so much for making it this far, taking the time, and giving me your consideration for just following me along on what is my lifelong dream. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, you guys are awesome. That's where I want to end it. You guys have really, truly, honestly, like, giving me hope that I'm doing something right. The thing that I love to do more than anything else in the world. And you guys have been like, that's not bad. I want more of that. To you, it might be this little inconsequential comment. To me, it's so much volumes because I've waited my entire life writing, showing friends, showing loved ones, like, hey, check out this thing I wrote. And then like, we'll check it out eventually. But the strangers on the internet, you guys did it, man. You guys made me feel all different kinds of joy. So thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything that you want me to further elaborate on or touch up on, put the comments in this video. And once I get enough, I'll make another one very specifically addressing all of those. As always, I'm your also glorious and beloved Mace Valor, signing off.